Let's get this out of the way immediately. The bulletin may not accurately reflect the messages on the ammunition. Wall Street Journal originally said that internal law enforcement bulletin, that's vague, said transgender and anti-fascist ideology words were on the cartridges. They're walking it back. Okay, let's get this out of the way. How much room is on a cartridge? Was it engraved or written? Was it a big Sharpie or a small pencil? Find a cartridge or any other brass item, clean it, because most cartridges are cleaned before you put them in again, at the factory. Try to write on it. I'll wait. Grease pencil is used on rifles in one case, but ammunitions, not so much. And also, the word bullet at least wasn't used. They used the word cartridge for once. I guess the Wall Street Journal getting heckled by me in the comment section. I actually set up a Wall Street Journal articles, hookup thing so I could send them constant screaming at them. Stop calling a bullet a cartridge and a cartridge a bullet. Let's review. 10th of this month, Utah Valley University's UVU courtyard area. Just outside, quote, the Hall of Flags, which is a breezeway with windows in it and that sort of thing next to it as well. At a specific degrees, minutes, and seconds by degrees, minutes, and seconds. Question. Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years? And then counting or not counting gang violence. And before he could answer, the guy asking the question said something, and then at 10:12 p.m., a shot came from under 200 yards away. Indicated by people at the time, but they didn't explain why, from the Losee Center rooftop. By 1:45, he was in critical condition and going through surgery, and by 2:40 p.m., he was announced as no longer being with us. There were no metal detectors at the area, and if you look at the Google Street Views I'm providing below, that kind of makes sense because the area was it's literally an amphitheater in the ground. It's really, really difficult to get a shot to that location. So I understand. I'm not complaining about the lack of security. This is a college campus. It's very low risk, or it was. Anyway, there wasn't any suspect until they got a video and or CCTV camera image of a person in dark clothing, wearing white shoes, and the shirt had an overtly patriotic statement on the front that you would see very typically in Utah. These are T-shirts that anybody would wear. By the way, for those of you who are immediately yelling one thing or another in the comment section, your comments will not show up unless you're being reasonable. Let's review. Why would a person not blend in if they were trying to blend in? Why would a person imitate one side or another that you like or don't like so that you can have something to talk about in the comment section? And why would somebody phony Donald Trump's signature many decades ago before he was going to run for president? Let's move on. Where are the Epstein files? Let's move on. Now I'm going to review the firearm. They found a Mauser bolt-action rifle. Claims it was surplus. Claim it was 306 or 30-06. 30-06 is what we say. That's also called 7.62 by 63. And that's the cartridge. Yes, they used the word cartridge accurately. This was very nice. If you zero it at 100 yards, it will have almost exactly a 3 to 4 inch drop at 200. This was less than 200 yards away. And now we take out our magical mystery device, the tape measure that have you ever noticed that props never work? So we're going to use the tape here. Pulling this out to 4 inches. This is the amount of drop from my eye socket down to my mouth. Okay? If the impact was here, if we line it up this way and then lean up a little bit, and Kirk leaning forward slightly, and it being from an up angle on top of a building that's very elevated, looking down on Kirk underneath an awning that would have covered probably the top of his face. This might have actually been a high shot. The person might have been firing a gun that wasn't zeroed at all. It had a scope on it, but people have criticized the scope mount. Oh, by the way, the picture you see of the firearm may or may not be the actual firearm. It may have been an example photo. People in the news aren't clearly marking anything. Gee, that should be a great big surprise to all of you who've watched all the other times that news media and police departments have said things. They had to walk back and put up images that were completely misleading and made assertions that didn't make any damn sense, or they didn't bother walking it back and just told you to live with it. And in other news, but yeah, that drop is approximately correct for somebody trying to aim for a guess at the middle of the face. Does this indicate a sharpshooter, well-trained, Dealey Plaza kind of thing going on, grassy knoll, or does this indicate somebody who's an amateur? This is an intermediate to amateur mistake. Center of body mass is what you use for a reason. There's a column of blood vessels and nerves that go from approximately here, that's the brain, all the way down, straight through the mouth, down through the throat, all the way down to where you're sitting. And literally, it's like a scale from the bottom to the top. You have a higher likelihood of causing an individual to stop doing what they're doing that you're trying to stop them from doing. Let's just put it that way. Because you'll hit spinal cord, blood vessels, etc. The major component, however, is the heart, the chest, that sort of thing. Hitting the spinal column, unless it's a deer rifle cartridge, isn't going to stop someone. Aiming for here is likely to miss. And no, people aren't sharpshooters enough to hit an ear. That's a miss. Okay, let's just get on with it. So this was almost not going to work. Whoever did this was almost not going to get it. Or they sighted it in, put it in a box, transported it, and knocked around the scope just enough, a tiny little bit. 1/100 of a millimeter can cause an error that can be pretty significant at long range. Now we're going to get to the bad reporting. Now again, I'm repeating that the drop is consistent with someone who sighted it in at 100 yards and it dropped 4 inches or so, 3 to 4 inches. This is common. I have the tables listed in one of the links below. And the rifle was probably a surplus. If the claim surplus means that they just rechambered it. You can just rechamber the cartridge to fit into the gun. No, it doesn't have to be dead on perfect to do the job. And also, most of them are all made to the same standard because a 30 cal is a 30 cal is a 30 cal, for the most part, for the projectiles. And they've been the same for a very long time, decades. We'll get to the way the guy's dressed. Let's not do the Wall Street Journal bullshit. Let's do the guys dressing that way. This would be easy to take off the cap, take off the glasses, take off an outer shirt and have a t-shirt underneath that's smaller, and then walk X number of blocks with this stuffed in a bag, then take off the pants and have a completely different appearance. The shoes are a little bit more difficult, so maybe that's why they're white. My suspicion is the guy was walking around wearing literally white clothing to be completely different than what was seen at the location, and probably went through some woods on purpose because there'd be less likelihood of a video camera there, and came out of the woods somewhere where there wouldn't be any cameras pointed at him. That's what I would do if I was doing this in a Call of Duty video game sense. As for disposing of the rifle, unless you wipe it completely clean, preferably with a chemical solvent to make sure that there's no data left behind, you're leaving yourself open for something. But carrying around a rifle after a shooting is a bad idea. So this is a calculated decision on their part. And no, I'm not going to explain to you what I would do if I was trying to do a shooting in some movie, okay, with a rifle. I'm just going to state that this is almost exactly the right rifle to do it because it's so fucking common and it would be so easy to get. The other reason is it could have been done by private sale, and if you trace the serial number, it's only going to go back to the last person who had to go through an FFL and have it listed with a serial number, which means the last person who could have owned it might have died decades ago, and it might have been in a yard sale like 10 years ago. Okay, that's how the guns are in this country. I don't complain all you want to, that's not the point. And next thing, using a .308 or a .30-06 is about the most generic rifle on the planet, and besides a shotgun with a long barrel, it's nearly the most unregulatable item on the planet. Pistols are more regulated and do less damage. Okay. Next, it being very close to 7.62 by whatever that you might be thinking of when I said that, this being a very common barrel all over the planet. And pro tip, there's a pipe diameter that fits it. Some of the guns out there are actually just made out of a specific variety of water pipe. Yeah, you anneal it, mill it, make it a perfect rifle, and then you heat it up to tempering temperatures and then pour the coolant through the barrel. It's that fucking common. But anyway, let's get on with it. And that's if you wanted to make it nice. You could just make it crappy and make it work. The Internal Law Enforcement Bulletin By the way, what I was saying before is finding this guy can almost be impossible. But anyway, internal law enforcement bulletin. Okay. Not ready for prime time. Next. Words were on the cartridges. How were they put on? They don't describe it. Somebody decided it had to be etched in or scratched in. Okay. Have you ever scratched into metal and have it readable? Next. How do you get an impression from that without modifying the cartridges? I mean, how do you copy that so that we can see it? Next. Quote, transgender and anti-fascist ideology, end quote, is the only thing said. The next thing is that another version of that same statement with a quote not limited to something completely highly misinterpretable was done that's less misinterpretable. Why did the Wall Street Journal do that if they had, quote, an internal law enforcement bulletin in front of them? Maybe they're full of shit. Maybe they were just listening to... News people aren't journalists anymore. Admit it. I don't care which way you want it to go. I'm assuming, because Charlie Kirk was taken out, that it was somebody who didn't like him because he's a bigot and a fascist. Not a Nazi, a fascist. There's differences. And yes, you can be anti-fascist or Antifa or anti-Nazi. Those are three technically different things, but let's move on. The word ideology is used. Unless you're a conservative wombat... the word ideology used in a law enforcement bulletin and being very vague is extremely suspect. Yes, if you're a conservative wombat, you're going to say it's not suspect. We already know who did it, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, except the guy matches every single characteristic outside of that range. I'm not saying this is copium on the part of somebody who is an ICE, somebody who's, a low-level person, someone who isn't actually an investigator. I'm just saying this... Anyway, the bulletin may not accurately reflect the messages on the ammunition, meaning this is not witnessing what was on the ammunition. It's too vague. It uses loaded language by using the word ideology in a way that is extremely sus. And it says law enforcement bulletin. Is it the FBI or not? Next, I'm going to point out that statements by police departments over the last decade have become the least likely source for getting straight facts in the first few minutes that I've seen. Case in point, the Delphi incident. I don't trust the police departments to ever be completely transparent or honest. They come up with excuses, some of you are going to make excuses, and then when you don't like it, you're not going to take those excuses anymore. Everybody has selective hearing and selective morals and situational morality and beliefs and ideals. I understand that. Same here. I'm a libtard. Whatever. This is suspect as hell. Please don't repeat it. I'm going to put it in the title of the video and say the word sus, and I'm not going to use Kirk's name in the title or anything like that. But anyway, this is an incident that happened, and yeah, that was literally the only place someone could have got a shot off from just about. It's not exactly, but you can look at the Google Street Views I provided. I can't see any other angle. I looked at the winter and summertime photos. It's summertime technically still. That was a difficult shot to make, and the fact that it hit its target was amazingly almost accidental. It would have been more effective, if anybody's curious, it would have been more effective to just, hit the mic or something nearby or knock the thing down and scare them than to do this. Because all you're doing is emboldening that side that you're trying to attack. The only thing you prove by killing someone is that you want to shut them up. You're afraid of what they say. So don't, I'm not endorsing this. But I'm also not going to cry about him because he was actually a bad person in many ways. But that's opinion. But it's not opinion that this is extremely suspect, and I would assume that this is bait. I'm being blunt. Other than that, all we know is someone did almost everything I would have suggested someone do if they were doing a movie and trying to make sure their character didn't get caught. Almost. I'm not bringing up the rest because that would absolutely violate YouTube's guidelines. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. Let's see how long this video stays up.